I've been here for 5 years and I've owned 5 businesses in 5 years. And I started giving back to the community. So I started asking myself, what should I do? I started browsing ideas. Then I'm like, podcast. I'll start a podcast. I won't be able to teach the audience because I'm not expert, not qualified to help anyone. But what I can do is ask bold questions to qualified people. And I'm going to ask, how did you make your first million? Because this is credibility. The purpose of this podcast was from the beginning is giving value and giving back. Because I felt like I owe this community. Mo, Ottawa, born and raised?
I was born in Lebanon and moved here when I was very young, about 3 years old.
3 years old.
Raised in Ottawa.
That's awesome. And you stayed in Ottawa.
Stayed in Ottawa. It's hometown for me for now.
That's amazing. How much do you love it?
I don't love it that much, to be honest.
No?
No.
I see you traveling all the time.
I have spent half of my time in the Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area right now. You know, Ottawa is where my parents chose, and it was a great decision for them. But now that I have my experience and, you know, what I've learned in my life, there are better places to go. Most people, they stick with what they know and where they've been, but they haven't really been intentional about what they want.
That's right. I remember how I met you for the first time. You were naked, just wearing a short on your skateboards on the street. And you looked so much like one of my clients. I picked up the phone and I called my client. And I'm like, do you have a brother? He's like, yeah, way sexier one. And that's how I met you for the first time. And then after this, it's a history. Would you mind telling me your story in 1 minute?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up very poor. Family grew up in subsidized housing. I would go door to door when I was 12 years old, selling different products and services. And I always thought I would be wealthy, but, you know, when I was 16, I wasn't wealthy. I was actually overweight and broke, and that was kind of a shock to me. I don't know, didn't think my life would go that way.
At 17?
At 17, yeah, I got into a fight. I got beat up. I got dumped the next day, and I just made a decision at that point to just be the best that I could be and never put myself in that position again. So I started training first, physically training, got into excellent shape. And
how long did it take?
It took about 2 years.
Nice.
To do that, but it was extreme dedication. A lot more experience now than I did then, but then I was fully committed to that. And what I would do is, when I wasn't training, I would go to the bookstore, Chapters, or Indigo is, now it's an Indigo, and I would read. And I would read all day. I would read so much so that, you know, they actually removed the couches in Chapters because of me and a few others that would spend all day reading there, right? I read a book on every shelf, nonfiction shelf in the bookstore. I've always been a voracious reader. I love reading. I just switched to nonfiction and extremely curious, deeply curious. It wasn't just like, you know, I read business books, psychology books, physics books, chemistry books, whatever my curiosity was, you know, leading me to. And when I was 18, I took a contract to do some work out in British Columbia. And that was life-changing for me.
What kind of work?
I was fixing phone lines, okay? And never fixed a phone line before. But from going door to door, from being super fit, you know, and really working on myself, people wanted to help me. You know, if you really put your maximum effort and your best self forward, the world will give you guides and they will help you. And I met a random guy in a parking lot one day. He's like, hey, man, like, what are you up to? He knew me from back in the day. I'm like, not much, you know, just training and like learning, doing my thing. He's like, you should go check out this opportunity. So I'm like, I go. 2 weeks later, I'm in BC.
Oh my God.
Okay.
Do you call this law of attraction?
You know, it's the law of attraction. It's the law of manifestation. You have to not just, the law of attraction, the problem with that is a lot of people look at it as if I believe, then it'll be true. That's one part of it.
You have to put some work in.
You have to act.
Go to the gym.
Correct.
Read some books.
You have to make forward momentum.
Talk to people. I see.
Exactly. So I'm in BC. For me, it was really interesting because I was in deep BC, like in the wilderness, in Kamloops. And we would drive out into just this majestic landscape. And it would just be me and the main technician, and we would just be in the middle of nowhere, right? And I'd never really left Ottawa. The furthest I went was Toronto, okay? I went to Lebanon once in grade 2, and that's the only traveling I've ever done. And then I came back to Ottawa, and I guess they liked me because they gave me another contract to go to Palm Beach, Florida, just outside of Miami. And that was a game changer for me. because I had never before in my life seen wealth. I grew up in the hood. To me, person who had a single home was a baller. That was like a rich person. You know, that was a big deal. And I'm pulling up to these gated communities in Palm Beach. And I'm like 18 at the time. I'm the youngest phone technician in the country, by the way. I had no idea how to fix phone lines. The first day I got there, they're like, go get your equipment. I go and I got a bunch of stuff. I don't know what I'm supposed to grab. And then the main guy turns to me, he listens to me. He's like, you don't know what you're doing. He's like, you're going to go home. And he was like this big, aggressive, black guy, football linebacker, college player back in the day. Gets up in my face. He's like, da-da-da-da-da-da. I'm like, whoa. And I was pretty much crying, to be honest. I'm like, okay, there goes my opportunity. But they didn't let me go. And how I stayed alive was just through effort and persuasion. I would, instead of fixing the phone lines, because that was our job, we were supposed to fix phone lines after Hurricane Katrina at the time. I would have a conversation with the homeowners, and I would just interview them. Hey man, tell me, what are you about, man? Like, how did you get this? Like,
create a rapport.
Yeah, create rapport and just make them feel good, frankly, right? I was like this 18-year-old, like youthful, attractive energy, and they wanted that. They're like old Palm Beach wealth. I wanted what they had. They wanted what I had. Nice. Right? Nice. I never fixed any phone lines. That's a good one. But I survived that contract. And that gave me, I was making $30 an hour, getting paid for 12 hours a day.
That's like 20 years ago.
Yeah. 13 days on, 1 day off, right?
Wow.
So I stacked a lot of cash. And they would give you $100 a day on top of that for living expenses. And speaking of, attraction, I think I was speaking to my dad or something. I'm like, hey man, like I'm in Palm Beach. He's like, oh, we have a relative there. You should hit her up. Okay, so I messaged her. I was like, hey, let me take you out for dinner. Okay, never met her before in my life. We go for dinner. I'm like, yeah, I'm staying at this motel. I'm, doing this contract work. She's like, you're coming home with me today. We go back to the motel. She makes me, I'm like, I can't do that to you. She makes me pack all of her stuff, okay? And then I end up living with her for like a couple of months while I'm doing this contract. And I never met her before, right? She's like a cousin of mine through my dad. Like,
so you're saving the $100 a day too.
I'm saving $100 a day, yeah, exactly. I spent no money down there. And then I ended up staying with another relative of mine who I'm deeply grateful. You know, Salam.
Yes, I know Sam.
I stayed with Salam. Yeah.
No way.
Yeah. After a while, I'm like, okay, because I was staying in her kid's room, right? And she's like, you can, Salam's here, another relative of us. And he's like, yo, come stay with me. That was awesome. I think I slept on his couch or something, or like an air mattress. And that was great. I was happy, I'm like, great. So I came back to Ottawa, and I think I had like $20,000 or $30,000 saved from that contract work.
How long was the contract?
It was 3 months.
That's good saving, man.
That's good savings.
18-year-old.
18 years old, right? Great. Hustler. I go back. My parents needed a new furnace. They have to fix their furnace. They need a new one and the whole system.
They made a list for you. Huh?
$8,000. There you go. Thank you so much. Okay? And then, I really did not want to be at home. That's for sure. It wasn't conducive to the kind of person that I wanted to be. And I didn't really know what I wanted at that point. I was just like, I go back home, I have a little bit of cash. I knew I wanted to do entrepreneurship, right? There's 4 quadrants of income. You either work for someone or you're selling your time, right? You pay me for my time. That's the exchange of value. Or you're self-employed, where you're selling your time but directly to the client. So there's no middleman that's taking your markup, essentially. The third one is you are a business owner. This is different than being self-employed. Self-employed is you're the business. Business owner is you have a system that generates you money. Okay, this is where you want to get to. The fourth one is you're an investor. Is when your money works for you, right? It's actively creating you. It's like little soldiers. You send them to go to work, and they bring back more resources ultimately. The only way to get wealthy is to be either in the business or investment quadrant. You can't go to the investment quadrant without cash. So you got to go to the business one first. To go to the business one, you have to usually go through, you start off as an employee. I was broke, okay? And then you go to the self-employed, which I'm getting to now. And then you go into the business quadrant. So I'm like, okay, I got to get to this business quadrant. I read a lot. Right? That's a whole book called Rich Dad, Poor Dad. That's the whole notion of that book. And I'm like, okay, well, how do I get to the business quadrant? Well, I have to start a business. Okay, so somehow I end up starting a landscaping company, going door to door again. I'm pretty good at going door to door. And it was hard. You know, and I would bring some of my friends. Most of my friends couldn't do it. They quit. They quit the first day. They got rejected. It was a lot of labor. You know, rain or shine, you're out there. You're grinding away. But it was good. I was making $500 a day cash, and I was keeping me fit. I was happy about that. And then I hired a few people, and they were going door to door, and they created a little system. And then that was all good. So I was making good money, and then in the off season, I was reading, I was studying, training, and making my little cash. I'm like, you know what? This is just not going to be a big business. This is not really what I want to do. So I sold those 2 landscaping companies. One was doing asphalt repair, and one was doing lawn maintenance, aeration.
Did you cash out like good money?
Nope, I made my money back. But I was making $500 a day.
So you got a good salary?
Yeah.
And you didn't lose money when you sold the business?
No, it was, I liked it from the like physicality perspective. And, you know, if you succeed in your first business venture, my God, good for you. Like that is an extraordinary thing, right? So it was kind of a break-even situation for me. So I'm like, what am I going to do? My buddy was working at a gym at the time. And he's like, hey, Mo, we want to renovate this gym. It's in a mall, Carlingwood Mall, if you know Carlingwood Mall. There used to be a gym in the bottom of that mall. It was old and gross, and he was one of the trainers there. And they're like, hey, you should come. I can probably help you get this contract. I'm like, you know what? Construction's not bad. Like, it's a big market. Billions of dollars are spent in construction. Let me go check it out. So I go, I check it out, I price the job, I get the job.
How did you price the job? And you've never worked in construction before.
That's a great question. It was just a lot of relationships, really, honestly.
Seriously, that's how I used to work in Ottawa.
Yeah,
This guy's not a contractor. I'll just bring him to do the work for me.
Well, I got screwed at that job. So there's a reason why they gave me the job, because they knew I didn't know what I was doing. So I underpriced the job. They're like, oh, you want to do it for this price? Okay, no problem. Go ahead and do it. I started doing.
Your dad, I think, is in the carpentry, right?
He's a tiler. So he was like a handyman. This was like a commercial construction project.
You went in thinking that you will subcontract it.
I went in thinking I'm going to figure it out. Okay,
Well,
I didn't
by the
even
way,
know what
I like
subcontracting
that.
was.
I like that.
I didn't
like
know what
that.
even gypsum was.
I like that.
I never put up a stud before. Okay,
These are some big fucking balls, man.
hey, big balls. Now I'm like, it was very, very painful. Okay, so 6 months I'm on this job, and I wasn't getting paid, and I don't know how to read the plans. I don't have any employees. I don't have any subcontractors. I got to figure this shit out. And I remember, you know, I had to bring a bunch of cinder block down, and there was like 9 skids of cinder block, and my hands were bleeding. I had to bring them across 2 flights of stairs. There was one time where it was like 2 a.m. I'm by myself, demolishing a cinder block wall that was sprayed with insulation. So it's all dusty and dark. I had one little ring light. Okay, I had no money for anything, and I'm just like, what am I doing with my life? You know, it was a dark place for me. Right. Eventually, I'm like, this guy's never going to pay me. He's just screwing me over. So I cut that off. And then I'm like, okay, you know what? I gotta do something different here. The commercial construction is contract based. You can't really talk to the client and figure shit out. So I said, you know what? Let me try focusing more on the residential side. And that's what I did. And that turned out to be a big unlock for me, because I could talk to the clients. They're smaller projects. I could do more of them. If I screwed one up, I'm not dead. You know, you screw a commercial project up, you're dead, right? It was climbing back up. I lost all of my money on that project, and I had to start again, but I had a little bit of experience at that point. And, you know, here I was. I'd post on Craigslist, Kijiji in Canadian version, and, hey, like, you know, anybody looking for work? I'm a contractor. I could help you out, whatever. And some people responded. And I would go price their jobs, and I would underprice them, so they would give me the work. And
You want to be competitive with the price in the beginning.
You got it. And build relationships with them. And that's what I did. So I did $1 million, actually, out of Starbucks. Never had an office. Okay? For 1 year, just estimates.
$1 million.
$1 million in
1
sales.
year.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So that was a big jump for me.
What was your role? Just sales and customer service?
Everything.
Or you were doing
It was
most
everything.
of the work?
I was doing everything. I wasn't doing as much of the work. So, because I don't know the work.
Because $1 million worth of construction labor, that means you busted your ass off 24/7.
No, I
It was only
subcontracted.
You subcontracted.
Yes,
This makes
yes, yes.
sense now.
Because I was like, I don't know the work, but I know sales. I know marketing.
And
So
I
let me
know
focus what I know.
subcontractors.
And I'm like, well, I found them, right? So I would sell on Kijiji, and I would find contractors on Kijiji. You know? Then I would kind of just manage the delta, the arbitrage between them.
What was your conversion rate? for sales?
It was reasonable. I don't know. It wasn't
80%, 20%?
No, it wasn't that high. Maybe it was around 20% actually. Maybe like 15%. 1 in 5 projects I would get.
How about your ROI? Like how much money did
I made
you make out of
I made about $200,000 to $250,000 on $1 million.
20-25%.
Yes.
It's really good.
It's really good.
Now it's really good for any investment.
Right? Self-employed. But it was hard, man. Like, it was hard. It was so hard.
Why hard?
Because you're doing everything. I had to figure out how to build contracts. I had to figure out how to find these contractors and manage them and get building permits. Back then. There was nothing back then. The internet just came around back then. There was no smartphones back then.
You have to read some books.
Okay. No smartphones. So I'm like, whatever. So I got a little basement office. And then what I'm really good at, or at that time, was sales and marketing. So I'm going to focus on what I'm good at, my core competencies, which is something everyone should do. And I'll contract everything else out. And that's what I did. So I went from 1 million to 2 million. I got a little basement office in this dental clinic. And then my friends at that time were starting to graduate. So I started hiring my friends. Okay. Then we end up taking all of the office.
You dropped out of school.
I never went to school. I'm a high school dropout. Yeah. Not to harp on education because...
No. But I'm saying you did it and you didn't go to school. So good job. I'm not saying people shouldn't go to school.
The reason I didn't go to school because when I look at my teacher, I'm like, you don't know much more than me. So what are you going to teach
smart
me?
Ass.
Yeah, it's kind of a smart ass. What are you really going to teach me?
You still are.
Like, And then not only that, you got to go at their pace on the subjects that they want to teach you on. I'm like, I don't want to learn this. I want to learn this on my pace because this is more valuable to me, right? So I spend about 2 hours a day educating myself, just to give you an idea. Still to this day.
Nice.
Okay? Every day.
2 hours a day, every day.
Pretty much, yeah.
Where do you learn from now? Is
podcasts,
books,
audio books, newsletters.
Do you do time blocking for those 2 hours?
So all of my travel, I listen to no music when I travel. I only listen to podcasts and audiobooks. And I travel a lot, right? Everywhere I go. On the way to, the coffee shop, when I'm shaving, when I'm preparing my food.
You're always learning.
Always.
You don't feel like sometimes like you're getting so much load of information and like your brain stopped consuming this knowledge? Because I tried to do that before, like for a couple months. The minute I wake up in the morning, my Audible is on.
Yeah.
I'm driving to work, Audible is on. I'm driving to the gym, Audible is on. On the way back home, Audible is on. Doing whatever, Audible is on. Then I felt like, oh shit, like my brain is telling me stop.
Why?
So then I had to start
Why
making like time blocking. 1 hour of learning a day, or when I'm traveling on the plane, because I felt like I'm consuming too much. Like I finish a book and a half every 2 days. And I felt like, okay, I need to take some time to take this information, take some notes, use it, and then move on to new information. That's what
I used to read about a book every couple of days when I was younger and I didn't have a lot of knowledge. Now I do not do that. I like to go slower. And I like to really be intentional on what I do learn. So if there is, and I learn a lot in specific genres. So I'm not like jumping too much.
What are you reading now? What genre?
Business is consistent. Investing is consistent. So business, I like startups, investing. Health is a really big one. I consume a massive amount of
I know. In the next part of the podcast, I'm going to ask you some health questions.
Yeah, that one's a huge one.
You motherfucker,
right?
6-packs kind of guy. Fuck you, I hate you. Let's go back to your story. Let's wrap it up. So you did $1 million in revenue. Then you had an office in the basement. And then what happened next?
Yeah, I hired a bunch of my childhood friends. It was awesome. There was like 12 of us. We were running this awesome operations. Nobody knew what we were doing. I copied my main competitor, which was actually a very important thing at the time because I kept making a lot of mistakes. So from 1 million to 5 million, I didn't make much more money. Okay, I was actually losing money between 3 and 5 million.
Really?
Yes. Because you have to build infrastructure, you have to get experience, you have to hire the right people. So you make money between 1 and 2 to 3 million. You lose money from 3 to 5, 6 million.
Not all the time.
In this specific business you do. Okay?
Really? In construction?
In construction, yeah. Because it's a different company. From 1 million to 3 million.
Can't you outgrow your growth? Like, I know, like, from us, I could always smell like there's some growth coming our way. So I would always hire people, invest in them, and get them ready for the growth.
Yeah, so when
So
you're
if you
hiring
do
them,
this in
investing
construction,
them.
You don't lose money.
Yes, you do. You're paying them. They're not producing for you. You're buying more office space. It's not producing for you. You're spending more on marketing. It's not producing for you.
Manageable. Like we're doing this right now. We did this last year. We did this the year before. Like I don't need to hire 5 more employees, but I would try to start hiring someone. I don't need extra space. So I'd keep it like very managed. Like, okay, I think this service is going to take off. Let me get ready for 5 more clients. And then along the way. But I can't argue the construction business because I'm not there. I've never done it before.
After that point, it becomes more and more profitable.
After the 5 million.
Correct.
Okay.
So 5 to 7, you're back in the green. 7 to 12, you're doing well, right? Your margins are better because, like you said, you don't need to add much more infrastructure at that point. You've already paid the cost for the infrastructure. To give you an idea, I had a dental clinic office. I was paying like $1,000 a month rent there, right? And it didn't need much renovations, but I could only do $3 million from there. Then I had to get another office. It was like 5 times the cost. I was still only doing 3 million, 4 million, 5 million. Then it justified the larger office.
I see.
The more staff.
I get your point. I get your point.
So you get more profitable once you take on your infrastructure cost and you get past that, then you start really becoming profitable.
Nice.
So we're making more margins now doing 20 million than when we were at 3 million.
Yeah, because you and your team adjusted to the routine. So once you hit a plateau, you know exactly what you're doing. There's no surprises. There's just replicating the same lessons and the same things that you learned before.
So many mistakes happen from 3 to 5 million.
I see, because you're growing, you're learning, you're expanding.
Exactly.
I get it.
There's a lot we can unpack there. I don't know if you want to dig into that, but so all my childhood friends, then I expanded to Toronto, Calgary, Vancouver, offices across the country. Calgary, Toronto, didn't work. Vancouver worked. And then at that point, I was like, okay, where am I going to go in the construction industry? I kind of fell into it, okay? And at that time, I had a little bit more understanding of business and business models. And I wanted to get into tech. Okay? And I was naive, to be honest. I thought it would be easy. I thought I would just figure it out. So I shifted from construction to tech. So I went from top guy in construction to absolutely nobody.
What did you do? Did you sell your company?
No, I didn't. I sold shares in one of them.
Okay.
The other one, I didn't. I brought partners in.
Okay.
Thank God I didn't.
You delegated.
Yeah, I brought partners in, and they did an awesome job growing the company. Okay, like stellar job.
But you were an entrepreneur. You weren't on the day-to-day work. You were just like keeping an eye.
I sit on the board. Okay.
Still on the board. Okay.
Yeah, still on the board, and still the major situation in the company, but. Bit partners in, and that was a great decision that I didn't sell the company. Plus, it's hard to sell construction.
How did you pick your partners? Was it hard?
It was one of my best friends. So he ran the Vancouver. He wanted to come back to Ottawa. You know Ferris.
Which one?
You don't know Ferris. You should do
a
podcast with him.
I know
Ferris
lots of
Alsaba.
Oh, yeah, I know him.
Yeah, you should do one with him too. He came back to Ottawa. He wanted to start a family. By the way, I started a family in that same time frame. I have 2 boys.
How old were you?
25.
I know you have 2 boys. I always see them on your stories. So you got married at 25.
I got married at 21-ish.
You were already married. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Wow, what the fuck happened to you? You were already a millionaire when you got married.
No, I wasn't. She came with me in that journey.
Nice. Nice. So, but by 25, why did you wait 4 years to have kids?
It was about 3 years.
Well, we got married at 21. You had the first kids at 25.
About 25, yeah.
So that's okay.
Like
Let's
21-ish,
say 3 years. Yes, 21-ish, 20 at the end of 24.
3-4 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
So why did you wait, or you were just like?
I mean, like you got to get married, and then you got to get a house, and then
you're very young.
You got to do the whole process.
Got married, man, that young.
Nobody gets married young anymore.
Holy
Nobody
shit.
has kids young anymore. Yeah, it's crazy.
Well, because they can't afford it, I think.
It's hard.
Yeah,
it's so hard. It was so.
They don't have the same opportunities like you. Like now, you're very qualified, and you're still not getting the job. You weren't qualified to do the cabling shit, and you still got the job, and it was good money. We don't have the same circumstances right now, man.
You know, I thought I could do the same thing in tech, and it's not the case in tech.
Okay, so you moved to tech.
Got my ass kicked. I had a bunch of property, and then, when I moved to tech, it was a huge opportunity cost in construction because I probably could have brought the organization to a massive amount of revenue in construction, and I gave that up. They still did. They're doing really, really well right now, thank God. And I moved to tech, and I'm like, I'll figure it out. 6 months goes by. 1 year goes by. I'm burning like 40, 50K a month. I'm like,
shit. What did you do? Do you create a service you're trying to sell it?
I built an app. It was a photo sharing app. Terrible idea. Terrible idea. It was a social media app. And I'm like, Mark Zuckerberg could do it, so I could do it.